In today's lesson, we're going to be looking at two really interesting parts of English language and English speaking that native speakers use without error, of course, all the time. So it's very important that we understand what these things are and how we can use them as well to get shortcuts to improve our overall fluency. So today we're going to be looking at phrasal verbs. You may have heard me mention this before. So we'll be looking at phrasal verbs and collocations. These two parts of English language are used often within English speaking, and they're definitely really useful and very interesting to practice to quickly boost our fluency, to make us sound more native. So without further ado, let's jump in and let's find out exactly what phrasal verbs are. Phrasal verbs are used by English speakers to explain and describe actions, much like verbs. And they sound very native in their use. A common error of non-native English speakers is to use phrasal verbs incorrectly. So that's where you get those questions from people saying, that sounds a bit strange, I don't understand you. So we have to be really careful with their usage. So how do we make phrasal verbs? Well, as I'm sure you're thinking, verb plus a particle, whatever that may be. Now, don't let that put you off because it's either generally an adverb or a preposition. That's how we make phrasal verbs. Verb plus adverb or preposition. Okay, and back down, that would be an example of a phrasal verb. Back being the verb, down being the particle. In this case, a prepositional particle. Here's another example, back around. So we have the verb back and here another preposition, around, back around. So that's two examples of phrasal verbs for you. Now, if I was to use an uncommon particle with the verb back, it would sound strange to a native speaker. So that's where we need to make sure that we're using them correctly. Okay, so there are tens of thousands of different phrasal verbs. In this lesson, we're going to be learning a few common ones that are used often in English speaking. But there's probably too many for you to sit down and just memorize them all. Throughout this course at points, I'll be showing you lots of different phrasal verbs that are very common in use. But also, just make sure when you're listening, reading, anything in English, that if you see a phrasal verb, take note of it, recognize it, identify it, and maybe you could write it down and try using it in your own language and speaking too. So one thing to be careful of is sometimes phrasal verbs can have more than one meaning, and that just means that it is worth understanding when you learn a phrasal verb that it can also have another meaning. So you have to be really careful with their usage. So check out actually has a few meanings, and I've only given 3. So check out can mean pay for your shopping. This could be online or in a store. It can also mean to officially leave a hotel, some accommodation that you have been staying at. So that's 2 meanings. And finally, it can also mean, in a kind of almost rude way, to look at someone you find attractive. So that could be quite a rude sense of the meaning. So we have to be aware of the context, the situation and the environment that we are using these phrasal verbs in. Something for you to be aware of. Okay, so there are a few different ways we can think of phrasal verbs and that we can group them. One way is with transitive and intransitive phrasal verbs. Sounds technical, it's not really. Let me explain for you. So a transitive phrasal verb, it must have an object or subject after them. It needs to come with an object. Here's an example. I've always looked up to Bill Gates for his charity work. Now, I need this, in this case, it's a person who is the object, Bill Gates, looked up to Bill Gates. Looked up does not work on its own. I've always looked up to the sky, to who? I'm not really sure what you mean. But in this usage of the phrasal verb looked up, I need a person, which can be considered the object. Looked up to Bill Gates. Hello there, I'm looking for a new smart TV, please. So the phrasal verb looking for needs to go with something. It doesn't work on its own. And intransitive phrasal verbs. So these cannot have an object after them. They can work alone. She's really grown up. I'm very proud of her. In all honesty, it was a terrible breakup. So there we can see they really do just work on their own. They don't need any extra information with them. Although we are using, in some respects, an adverb really to give it more information. In the second example, terrible, we've got this adjective to describe it there, but it doesn't need an object with it. Okay, so there's another way that we can separate and group phrasal verbs, and that is separable versus inseparable. Separate, separable versus inseparable phrasal verbs. And it's really as easy as it sounds, to be honest. Separable phrasal verbs can have extra words in the middle, so we can split up our two words within a phrasal verb and add information in the middle. Hey, give my phone back to me. In red, we have the phrasal verb give back, and we have some extra information in the middle. A really interesting use of a phrasal verb. Hey, give my phone back to me. I'm just going to cut the square outline out first. Again, in red, the phrasal verb. In green, our extra bit of information. As I'm sure you can guess, inseparable means phrasal verbs that can't be split up. They can't have phrases in the middle. I really need to face up to my problems now. Please look after my pet goldfish whilst I'm away. Okay, so just a couple of different ways of grouping phrasal verbs, useful in terms of just having a bigger understanding of what phrasal verbs actually are. And again, very native in their usage. Okay, so we're going to be looking at 15 really common phrasal verbs. And here is our table with these really useful phrasal verbs. Again, I'm just giving you a bit of a snapshot. It's very difficult to learn all of the phrasal verbs, but it's definitely useful to know a few and practice using them too. Okay, so work out. I usually work out 2 or 3 times a week. Work out, that means to go to the gym. It's also worth me saying that sometimes phrasal verbs look like they have different meanings. Work out. It almost sounds like something to do with maybe the office or your job. It's completely different. It's all about exercise, work out. We can say that sometimes phrasal verbs have idiomatic or hidden meanings, much like idioms. Work out. Wake up. What time do you wake up on the weekend? Not so much of a hidden meaning there. Turn down. Turn down the TV, it's far too loud. Turn off. Please turn off the aircon, it's freezing in here. Throw away. Any old cardboard you've got, just throw it away in the recycling bin. Put on. Why don't you put on your favourite shirt today? Pass out. We ran so far we nearly passed out. Look for definitely has no hidden meaning really. I'm trying to look for my phone which I lost last night. Hold on. Now this definitely does have something of a hidden meaning. It sounds like we need to grab something. That's not the case. It means to wait. Hold on. I'll be with you in just 1 minute. And give up. No, I really should give up smoking this year. Figure out. This maths problem is really hard to figure out. This means to solve something. Catch up. Slightly more informal, which means a little bit less academic, less polite, something maybe used more with friends. Catch up. It doesn't mean to run anywhere. It means to meet up with a person you've not seen for a long time. My Friday was great, thanks. I had a catch up with an old friend. Calm down. If you calm down and try listening, then maybe you will understand. Take off. This actually can have a few meanings. Take off your bags, now you're all inside. But it could also mean for a plane to leave the ground, to take off. And the last one of these really useful phrasal verbs, make up. Now this doesn't mean apply lipstick. It means to kind of solve an argument, to make friends again. We had an argument but made up and said sorry. Okay, so that's just a few examples of phrasal verbs in use so you can see how they're used. It's also giving you some extra language that you can note down and practice using yourself. Again, these are really common phrasal verbs used often by native speakers. But let us not forget part 2 of this lesson, which is quite similar to phrasal verbs. That's why I have pieced them or paired them together. And that is collocations. So collocations simply are words commonly paired together in English. So it's just natural pairing of different words. And it really does make our English sound native and fluent. Whereas on the other hand, if we use them incorrectly or an incorrect collocation, well, it doesn't make us sound so fluent. So definitely worth knowing collocations. Here's some examples, almost similar to phrasal verbs. I have the verb go. So in fact, phrasal verbs can be collocations, but I'm just using this for an example. So we're using go to sleep. That sounds good to me. Go around. Go down. Go fall. Oh, no, that definitely sounds weird. And in truth, that doesn't work. Go fall just is completely alien. And now that's an extreme example. However, there are times when maybe you could understand the pairing of words, but it's just not quite sounds natural. So just be careful. Okay, so there's 6 different groups of collocations. This is just so you understand how we group collocations, but as well how they are different from phrasal verbs, because trust me, they are. So we can have adverb and adjective. You know what? I feel ridiculously tired this morning. I won't leave a review until I'm completely satisfied. Of course, in blue, we have our collocations. We can have adjective and noun. My little brother is getting really cheeky. If I don't finish this work, I'm in deep trouble. Ooh, very native sounding expression there. And then we can have noun and noun. So these would be noun phrases. We watched an action movie at the cinema yesterday. My favourite dessert has to be cheesecake. Okay, on to the next three groups. A verb plus expression with preposition. Now these really do sound very native, really useful to know a few. She just burst into tears on hearing the bad news. We wouldn't say pop, explode into tears. We say burst into tears on hearing the bad news. I come from a very big family. We can have verb and nouns. If possible, I want to study overseas. This is more of a phrasal verb type expression. Tonight, I'm going to relax and just go online to play some games. Again, another example of a phrasal verb. And finally, we have verb plus adverb. He's been reading quietly for an hour now. Run quickly to the shops and pick up my post, please. Okay, so just an idea of the different types of collocations. It's more probably to the point that as you continue to study through this course, as you continue to develop your English skills, you will acquire more collocations. Reading, of course, is really important for that. But I'll be showing you loads of collocations throughout the entire course. So there's that to look forward to as well. Okay, so it's time for our animated part of the lesson all around phrasal verbs and collocations.